Here we go. Hello, good morning. How are you today? Hopefully you're having a good day. This is video 939. And over the weekend, if I could just share some bit of info, I'm going to talk about some historical information. Um, Over the weekend, I came across a video that was put on by the British Museum. Um, they had a series, I guess, that they were going over some of their items that they have. You know, if you're not familiar with the British Museum, um, they have a lot of things that probably don't belong to them. Um, Things that the British Empire has collected over the years. Statues, artifacts. I mean, think about like Indiana Jones times 10. Um, uh, uh, a lot of they have like Greek statues, that the empire, as it just over time collected in, other people's stuff, right? And it's on display in the British Museum. Uh, but the what they were talking about in this talk was two tablets um, that were from some they were written by a Babylonian scribe somewhere in I know I'm going to say Samaria, but that's not it. Samaritan, I don't know what that would be. Samaritata. Pardon my ignorance. But anyway, so it was a Babylonian scribe, poet, who recorded a tale, a story about the god Enki, and Enki uh, reaching out to someone who would be, I guess, a prophet then, but telling this, Samaritan or Babylonian person, um, hey, you are the chosen one, and I am giving you this knowledge. I want you to, you will save life as we know it. I want you to build uh, a boat, and on this boat, I want you to put two of every type of animal that you know of, one male, one female. Okay, sound familiar? Um, and supposedly the tablet, you know, um, obviously, clay, write it in clay. The clay dries, or they fire it, and it becomes porcelain, right? And I mean, it's not gonna rot. It's not gonna, you know what I mean? It's a piece. It's a rock at this point. It's a brick. Well, obviously, um, this is several. I think it was something like 11,500 or so, years before Christianity. You Um, Before, it's the story, I guess, is much older than really the Bible story of Noah and the flood. And Noah was told to build a boat, gather two of every kind, one male, one female, da da da. Um, and so I kind of was like, okay, well, not that I took the Bible as canon, or not canon. Um, I don't take the Bible as the Word of God. Okay, I don't take the Bible as anything really. Um, it's a story. It's fiction. But the knowledge, I guess, that you know the Bible, whoever took this story from another source and said, "Hey, that's really cool. Let's make that part of our stuff." Um, it kind of. I'm not going to say, we know authors steal from each other. J.K. Rowling, who's a friend of the community, right? Bitch. Um, she took a lot of stuff from Tolkien, who probably took a lot of stuff from some. He took a lot of his stuff from Norse mythology. You know what I mean? It's you are inspired and you think about it. And you say, well, gee, I'm gonna make this story. Da, 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 da. I mean, who can really say they created something original when you use the same kind of building blocks in a story? Um, and without knowing it, you might have an idea. Hey, I really like this idea of, you know, um, I want a weapon, and the weapon is maybe stuck in a rock, and at some point some chosen person, is the right, like Thor's hammer. They're chosen, and they're the ones that can get the sword out of the rock. And you'd be like, oh, you're just copying, British mythology or Celtic mythology with King Arthur, and you're like, well, what's that? You know, they're just common story elements. But anyway, so how this kind of comes into play here is last summer, about a year ago, really, um, during Pride, there were a number of people at my work who were um, very upset about Pride, gay Pride, and started to talk about making shirts. And if you go online and you Google, um, you know, um, Christian Pride shirt or something, you can use the keywords. You'll come across a T-shirt design that basically will show the heading on it might say something like um, "Promise, not Pride," and it'll be a picture of the stereotypical Noah's Ark with the rainbow over it, and animals, and it's a way of saying that it's wrong to use uh, well, that the whole idea of the rainbow really came from the Bible, and that gay people stole it. And that's another motif that I heard. Gay people have stolen the rainbow. The rainbow is a holy symbol of God's love for his children, blah, 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 blah. As well as you'll see this thing about pride is a sin. Okay. So you basically a group of people who are just like, you know, you all are going to burn in hell. You can't just make this sound better. You stole it from whatever, whatever. So that's kind of how this ties to transgender, to gay, is that people have taken this thing, this story, and manipulate it and turned it around into something mean and nasty against another group of people. And I guess what kind of made me, I'm gonna say chuckle to myself, but I was like, but can't you see that that whole story was stolen from, I mean, here, if you're accusing gay people of stealing the rainbow, by that same logic, you stole this story from a whole other people, a whole other culture, a whole other religion. If you want to, if you think of Enki as being a god and the followers of Enki as being, there's a religion there. So, this body of people, the Christian, Judeo-Christians, stole it from these people. And, does that mean these people up here can go, oh, you all stole it? Well, these people are long and gone, you know, Sumer, Mesopotamia, Babylon, it's gone, you know. And so, of course, the smart people here are like, oh, that's just a myth. We have a religion. when really, jump back in the Wayback Machine and go back several thousands of years, Sumer and Babylonia and the whole Mesopotamian area was a culture of people who traded, and they thought they had knowledge. They had knowledge, and I mean, it was just a matter of perception. That these people at their time lived and breathed, and they believed in their. You know what I'm saying? It was true to them in the same way that these people, it's true to them. God, Jesus. You know. Well, does this mean 5,000 years from now, if we're so lucky to still be alive, human beings, that, you know, we'll look back on Christianity and say, oh, that's just a myth. You know what I'm saying? It's just a matter of perspective. And probably if you're a Doctor Who fan, you can easily see, the time relationship of time and space. Um, just the understanding of cultural. It's just a matter of what time you're alive and where you are, time and space. Uh, so again, how it relates here is my life was impacted because um, there were people at my work, same person really, but people at my work who were so hell bent on making gay and transgender people feel bad. And they were using this as the basis of it, when in reality, it was totally stolen from another culture. And I'm gonna bet you that there were gay and transgender people in in Babylonia and Sumer, um, you know, and who knows? They may have been cooler with it. You know what I mean? They may have been cooler with it. They probably didn't care. I don't know. We don't know. They're gone. They're dead. Um, we'll have to look for a tablet, I guess. Um, but anyway. Um, so kind of my closing, or what I'm headed towards, is that in reality, as I see it, you may see it differently, is human beings, we have prejudices and preferences. And what I see with sort of this Christian, and I hate to say Christian because it's not, well, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Is that really, by its nature, Christianity is not anti gay. It's not. Um, but it is the people, a group of people, a subset of people, who have peeked and poked in Christianity to pull what they like and make a message of being anti-gay. Um, you know, they've taken bits and pieces of what they like and said, aha, this is Christianity. Well, we have Christian churches who are all inclusive, all welcoming, I think is kind of the current term, who use the same scripture, okay, what Jesus said, and have a totally different conclusion, you know. And when you ask someone who is anti-gay, Christian, well, how can you be? And they're like, well, in Ephesians, blah, 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 and in Paul's letter to blah, 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 um, none of it is the gospel. You know, the gospel's about Jesus, right? Um, Everything after that is fan fiction. And you could even say the gospels are fan fiction because Jesus never sat there and said, hey, you know, Fred, write this down. This is good stuff. The meek shall inherit the earth. Write that down. The gospels are all according to somebody, according to Mark, according to do, according. And so, Mark's sitting there with a piece of paper, well, that's what I remember. We were on the mountain and Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek." You know, it's fan fiction. It's an accounting of it. But Jesus himself never sat down with someone and said, "Mary, Mary, hey, do me a favor, write this down." And that never happened. So what we have in the Gospels is fan fiction. It's one step removed, um, and then everything else is like one more step removed. You know, Peter's in jail, and he's like, "Yeah, let's write this through. Let's see. You know, uh, don't eat meat on Fridays. But wait a minute, Jesus gave out fish. All right, you can eat fish, but no other meat." It was trying to quantify what happened before. And so, like I said, I think it's an error to say Christianity is against gay people. It's easy because it seems like it is. But in reality, people have taken what they see and turned that into a message of anti gay. As long as you have Christians who are not anti gay, I think we kind of need to caveat that out. But it's very easy, and I understand if you say, well, Christians are hate gay people, because it seems like that's a lot of people. But maybe they're just the loudest. You know what I mean? Maybe they're the ones with the deepest pockets. Um, hate sells. What can I tell you? But, peace sells, but who's buying? Um, but anyway, that's not really what I was talking about. It was this idea of someone using this as anti-gay, um, and then trying to make my life hell at work because I'm transgender, um, when their whole basis for it is stolen from somewhere else. Which, if you ask them, um, you know, well, you worship Jesus. Oh, no, 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 I just follow Jesus. I worship God. I worship Jesus too. Well, what do you think about Enki or all these other gods? And they'd be like, well, that's just made up. Well, if that's made up and that is the basis that Noah stole, or the authors, then that's made up too. And so your whole basis for hating gay people is made up. It's fiction. But see, they don't make that connection. They're like, oh no, it's the word of God. So over here in the agnostic atheist camp, we go, woohoo! Um, but in reality, I think I try to, I'd rather communicate and say, well, you're welcome to your belief, but it's been disproven as a source anyway. I don't necessarily know where I'm driving with this. Um, but maybe just a realization, if you had any doubt that we were uh, maybe God hates us or whatever. No, 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 no. It's all fiction. Maybe that's a hard pill to swallow. Um, what was I gonna say about that? But anyway, um, I think the takeaway, and then maybe I'll shut up because I've kind of run out of steam, is just that, something that maybe we already knew is that it's not Christianity that hates gay people. It is some Christians who use Christianity as a beard for their hatred. Oh, Joe, I don't hate you, but my religion says blah 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 blah. You know, they're using it as a dodge. You know, I love you. I think you're the greatest person in the world, but my book, the Bible, says blah 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 blah. Well, they say that, but they know that this is just a story. This is just a book. This is made up, and it was stolen from something else that was also probably made up and may have been stolen from something else, something from 20,000 years ago, or you know what I mean. Um, it's crazy. You know, we have a hard concept of time. Another video that I watched over the weekend was about some uh, footsteps. People, I'll say cave people. I know some people have an issue with that, but when I say caveman, cave woman, you know what I'm talking about. Uh, you know, 11,000 years ago or more. And I read somewhere something was carbon dated something like 16,000. But we have records of cave paintings and whatnot, and petroglyphs. And I'm getting way off case here. Anyway, people have been around for a long time, much longer than this thing, the Bible. Of course, this is the first book to Discworld, by the way. I'm reading that. I've never read the Discworld series. Um, you know, people have been here for hundreds of thousands of years. And here was this footprints. Someone walked across a lake bed, um, and the conditions were right, and it recorded. It became a sedentary rock. What probably would be a fossil if it was a little more developed. That we can see. The footprints, and you know, we human beings were so focused on the last 500 years. Excuse me, not 500 years. Well, 500 would be pretty close as far as you and me. Maybe the last 100 years. Um, but when you start thinking about, you know, more than 2,000, 5,000 years ago, people have been there way longer before that. And much like Sumer and Babylon, they had culture, they had festivals, they had philosophy, they had science, you know, and we look at it as if they're some kind of primitive, maybe primitive by our standards today, but they had culture and civilization and you know things they believed in. They celebrated, they laughed, they cried. You know what I mean? They had culture, and it's very hard, like for the people who were doing the shirts over the summer against Pride. Um, they believed that there was no rain. There were no rainbows because there was no rain before the great flood, as depicted in the Bible. And, so then you're like, well, okay, but how do you have crops without rain? How do you have plants without rain? How do you have life without water? You know what I mean? It's like, but to them, they believe it because it's in the Bible. And from there, I mean, that's where the whole we got into abortion and when does life begin, conception, and all that. But you know, there are people who take the Bible literally, um, parts of it, not all of it. Even though they'll say a true believer believes in everything, you know, which I find then that if I talk about the book of Revelation, if you look at the way angels are depicted, they're scary as fuck. I mean, an angel, what does the angel always say? Do not be afraid, right? Because they're fucking scary. But now we think about, well, I'll pray to the angel Michael or an archangel or something like that. And you see these like Greco-Roman, you know, beautiful men with wings or something. That's not how they're depicted in the Bible. You know, like I said, they're scary as fuck. I mean, something out of a Cthulhu book are these angels, hundreds of thousands of eyes and wings, four sets of wings and beaks. I mean, they're scary, you know. Um, I guess just like white Jesus. Um, you know, so anyway, the short of it is, um, you know, this body that's being used as justification against gay people in my lifetime used as justification against transgender people. It doesn't make sense when you start to look at it from a historical perspective or a scientific or an analytical perspective. And I don't necessarily know if maybe that's a clue for the future on how, kind of how we go from here. Someone can, well, these are my religious beliefs. Well, you're entitled to have your religious beliefs. Um, so long as your religious beliefs don't impose on someone else's freedom, you know. Um, I think that's very American, as our forefathers kind of envisioned it, that religion should not be used to make public policy. Um, I'm very curious from a historical perspective. How did, if Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and the forefathers, the fathers of our country were so deist, take God out of it. How did At what point did that change? You know, that we decided somewhere in the 60s, well, we got to put God on the money and God we trust. Um, we got to put God on all of our buildings. How did we get from being deist, from not including God, into, oh, we have to put God on everything? You know, is it like the Confederate monuments that were created in the 60s as a way of Jim Crow laws? You know what I'm saying? Like, how did we get from there to there? It'd be an interesting question because maybe that might help to get from here to here. you know, let's get God off the money. When someone says we need prayer in schools, oh fuck no. No, 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 no. You need prayer for yourself. But you know what I mean? How do we get back to being uh the way sort of the forefathers and the unknown for I'm pretty sure there were some foremothers as well. Um, how do we get back to that? Uh, get away from the notion that Christianity is America was a Christian nation, you know. Now if you're ignorant of the past, then it's easy to understand doing it. In the same way, if you're ignorant of this relationship that we talked about here between the Bible taking from other cultures and religions, but if you're here uh, and you have a brain, you know, I think you can say yes, Judeo-Christian beliefs are taken from other cultures, you know, and I like that. I believe in da 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 da, you know. Um, I think you could still be a very devoted Christian if you follow the words of Christ and not what other people tell you. Love one another. And the secret's there. That's what's this to say the Bible is full of contradictions is probably an understatement. But if you look at Jesus once again, uh, the scribes and the Pharisees trying to trip Jesus up. Well, what's the most important commandment? What did Jesus say? Love your God and to love one another. You know, if what you're doing doesn't pass those two things, then you're probably doing something wrong. And to love one another, the whole anti-trans, anti-gay, um, somehow that gets overlooked. You know, all the other stuff. When really that probably should be the litmus test, the acid test. You know, is withholding health care from someone loving them? Oh, well, I'm just doing what I think is best for them. Well, what gave you the authority to do that? You don't have that authority, you know. And people think the whole anti-abortion thing is, well, I'm doing it for the life of the child. And so they think then that's some sort of caveat that they can ignore the mother, ignore someone else's free will. Like I said, it doesn't make sense when you think about it, but probably religion doesn't when you think about it. Anyway, I've talked for too long. So, I wish you the best of luck in all that you do. I hope the future is, you know, I think, as always, in 10 years, I don't know how long it's going to take. I hope less than 10 years for Gen Z to Gen Z is the most educated and diverse generation we've seen. And whoever comes after Gen Z, I don't know what that's going to be. Maybe they'll start over again. They'll be Gen A. Um, but as far as gay rights and women's rights and equality and ethnic, you know, black rights and civil rights, man, when these people can make decisions and get rid of the politicians, just I mean, vote them out or just through old age. They're gonna die sometime, you know. Uh, and take when they die, they're gonna take their ideas with them. You know what I mean? All right. Bye bye. Good luck. Take care.